all the way to, okay, all the way to Obama, all right? That's how far we need to cover. Right here, Barack Obama, right? So that's our final chapter. And then we're gonna go through the DBQ. I have a sample essay for you. This is a sample essay written in 2020 based on 2018's prompt. So you will see 2020 was the first year of the pandemic, right? So you changed the exam into online and only one question, that is DBQ. No multiple choice, nothing in 2020, right? So we wrote this essay in 2020, and based on the 2020's exam, they only require 5 documents instead of 7. So you will see in this sample essay, we only have document 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but still using the same prompt. So we kind of like cross out document 4, we just pretend it was not there. And we also cross out document 5, pretend it's not there. So we will use 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, this 5 document for a simple essay right here, okay? And this will show you step by step, where is the contextualization, where is the thesis, and then body paragraph, topic sentence, along with the 2 documents and how we source it. And then here's our outside evidence, right? And the same thing for body paragraph 2. And conclusion, right here, restate the thesis. Okay, so you circle back to your assertion and then post context. Here is, you don't need to, but just know if you write the post context, it will give you more specific, insightful analysis for your overall essay. So that's our agenda today. All right, finish the last chapter, and then we will come back to look at this sample essay. All right, so this is where we stopped yesterday, right? Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So it's an arms race that as a result, both Soviet Union leader and American leader, they kind of compromise, right? Who remember what is the compromise? How JFK was able to ease out this tension? Anyone? The Americans, they celebrate the heroic achievement of JFK, but actually we know it's a compromise. So the reason Khrushchev agreed to retreat this missile is mainly because JFK promised what? Oi. Ria, do you recall?
Not really.
Okay. Jeffrey, do you recall?
Promise to first humans in space.
To what?
Right. First humans in space. Send first country to send humans into space. Was that something?
No. That was the response to the Sputnik, the first artificial. Okay. JFK. Okay. How did he manage to convince Khrushchev to retreat his missile back to Russia? He compromised. He agreed to retreat the military base in Turkey. Remember? So the Truman Doctrine specifically financed Turkey and Greece to fight against communism right after the World War II, right? And then by doing so, America could secure Turkey and Greece territory, right? And right away, America establishes, military base in Turkey. So America could check on Moscow with this, short range missile. That's good enough. And then, so by 1692, Khrushchev argued that that's the only fair, right? You can check on our capital. So we need to have something to balance back. So Cuba invited us here, right? But later they compromised. They don't want to escalate this tension and become the culprit to start a World War III. So they both agree, okay, Russia will retreat the missile back home, and where America agreed to remove this military base from Turkey, right? That's the compromise, right? Okay, now let's move on. Lyndon Johnson continue. Okay, no, not continue. He started. So JFK was assassinated in 1963. Okay, and The motive and the assassinator legendary committed suicide. And then, so the true motivation to assassinate JFK remained mystery, right? But nevertheless, Lyndon Johnson, the vice president, took over, right? So he was the one who promoted this Great Society program. That's kind of, upgraded version of New Frontier. So New Frontier was based on JFK's agenda, his policy agenda, to target poverty and to aid this space war against the Soviet Union, right? After all, he was the one who promised American society that America would be the first country to send human being onto the moon. Jeffrey, that's the one you remember, right? Also, Lyndon Johnson, he was the one that ratified the Civil Rights Act of 1964, right? So Civil Rights Act incorporate the 14th Amendment into all states, right? So through this Civil Rights Act, no more discrimination upon racial, gender, ethnic, okay, you name it, in public accommodation, right? So hence this one, public accommodation, right? So only apply to public. So if it's private, it's not included here, right? So how we define public? Public is when your business is open to the public, right? That would be public accommodation. Okay, give me a sec. Sorry about that. All right. So this public accommodation refers to any business that is open to the public, like what, restaurant, right? That's public. Like what, hotel, public. Even though you're private owned, but as long as your service is open to the public, all right? Doesn't matter it's government institution or private business, as long as it opens to the public, all right? So that's a civil right. And this is kind of the extension policy agenda starting from Warren's Court. Remember Warren's Court, right? So where this chief judge in Supreme Court promote this minority right, right? Civil rights. Okay. So Lyndon Johnson, he was the one signed this Civil Rights Act of 1964 and promote this Great Society. So Great Society is aiming to target poverty, fight against it, right? And continue this space war against Soviet Union, right? And also, America started to get involved with this Vietnam War after the retreat of France from Vietnam. So a brief history about Vietnam, okay? Vietnam used to be a French colony, but during World War II, Japan, remember Japan? Japan had the ambition to build his empire in Asia, in Pacific Ocean, right? So Japan started to invade his neighboring states, right? Starting from China, Korea, China, and then all the way down south to Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines, okay? So you name it. So Vietnam, before the invasion of Japan, Vietnam had its own civil war, right? So the North versus the South, right? So the North is like supporting communism, all right? And the South is capitalism, democracy, right? And then, so upon Japan's invasion, this former French colony, what happened to its mother country? The mother country fell to Germany, remember? Hitler, right? So French was no longer controlling Vietnam. So here came Japan, right? But 1945, Japan surrendered because of these 2 atomic bombs, right? And then France came back. Well, since Japan surrendered, and then the French came back and claimed, this is still French colony. But at that time, America tried to liberalize, right? Liberalize the previous colony and promote the idea of self-determination, right? So when France intended to take back Vietnam, America interfered and forced France to withdraw, okay, and kind of acknowledge the independence, at least autonomy of Vietnam. But that lead to the Vietnam War. So the Vietnam War basically it started as the civil war within Vietnam itself, right? North versus South. And then so French left and America, that time remember contentment, right? So America wouldn't allow this North Vietcong to invade, to violate the South's desire to practice capitalism and democracy. So America started to get involved in Vietnam Civil War. So that was a civil war to Vietnam. And America was like, aiding its allies. So at first it was just aiding like, few troops along with weapons and supplies. But gradually America's involvement in Vietnam War escalated, okay? The height was when Lyndon Johnson became the president, right? So Johnson was the one who really escalated the involvement of American in this Vietnam War, right? And the reason was why this Gulf of Tonkin, right? So American warship stationed here, not really like, involved in the war or whatever, but Americans warship was stationed here just in case, right? When America's support is needed by its ally, right? But North Vietcong attack Americans warship, right? And that triggered this, nationalism anger against North Vietcong, okay? So the Congress granted the president the right to take retaliation, right? So the Congress, you never seen that from happening before, unanimously, right, authorize the president, Lyndon Johnson. Just say it, whatever you need, Mr. President, we will approve it. So with this desire from the American society to take advantage, and not advantage, to take a revenge upon North Vietcong, and with the support from the Congress, Lyndon Johnson launched a total attack into North Vietnam, all right, to retaliate their attack upon American warship, all right? So ever since then, 1964, America started to get more and more involved in this Vietnam War, all right? So that's the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, right? And keep going. 1960s, note to yourself, this is the busy decade of Americans' civil rights movement. All right, so American civil rights movement is when civil liberty is guaranteed by Constitution. So your individual freedoms written in Constitution, right? When we say Constitution, here is the amendment, right? First to 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. So civil liberty refers to individual freedoms that is listed in the Bill of Rights. But civil right is what? Civil rights is the, minorities or marginalized group or American citizens, they fight for their rights to enjoy the civil liberty, right? So that's why we always hear civil rights movement, right? So right is not given to you. You're gonna fight for it. That's the movement's, kind of like a principle philosophy, right? So like African Americans, right? Through the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, they are no longer slaves. They are American citizens. They could vote, right? But how does Jim Crow law and Black Code deprive African Americans of civil rights, right? So African Americans have been oppressed for a century. And then in 1960s, they decided to fight back. They decided to fight for their rights. That is, was like a guarantee and given to them by Constitution, right? And why particularly in 1960s? Well, because you have a judge, Earl Warren, right, sitting in the federal Supreme Court, already indicate his political attitude, right? He's pro-minority, pro-civil rights, right? So the Warren's court we talk about, right? Each one is like a rule in favor of minorities, right? So if you're being you have been marginalized for years, what are you waiting for? You have a judge, chief judge, at your back, right? Side with you. So you take the opportunity and you fight, right? To fight, and you fight for whatever rights you deserve, right? So that's why in 1960s, it's the peak of Americans' civil rights movement, right? So in the 1960s, you will see protests organized by Martin Luther King, right? So African Americans' civil right. We have women's movement, we have Indians movement, we have farmers movement, we have immigrants movement, right? So all these are social minorities, one after one, they stood for their, deserved right, right? So if you look at these photos, this is JFK's brother, Robert Kennedy, and this is Robert Kennedy, right next to Martin Luther, right? Martin Luther King, and here is the Kennedys, three brothers, all are in the political career. And this is a Cesar Chavez, right? Immigrant. His family was an immigrant from Mexico, and his family was also a farmer, farming family, right? So he assumed this two, double social minority role, immigrants, farmers, and he too led his people, both immigrants and farmers, to fight for their rights, right? So Robert Kennedy, so brother of President JFK, right? He actually, after his brother was assassinated, right, in 1963, right? And in 1964, he kind of want to carry on his brother's agenda. So he ran for not president, but senator, okay? Because 1964, it was the year Lyndon B. Johnson ran for the second term, right? And you don't want to, run against your own party comrade, right? Both being Democrats, you don't want to split the vote. So Robert Kennedy, he did not run for 1964 president, but he did run for 1968, right? But during the campaign, he was assassinated. Okay, he was assassinated. So there's a saying that the Kennedy family was cursed. So two brothers, both being assassinated because of this political career, and their future generations, they're dying accidents, right? Car accident and then plane accident, right? So that's the Kennedy, right? On Cesar Chavez, we talk about him. He and Martin Luther King, these two leaders in civil rights movement, both promote the idea of nonviolent protest, right? So their philosophy were highly influenced by Gandhi. Post World War II, Gandhi led Indians to fight against Britain, because Britain during World War II appealed to all these colonies, right? And sort of like a mandatory, right? Force these colonies to enlist themselves to fight for the mother country, right? And in order to encourage the colonies to participate in World War II and fight for Britain, British government actually promised the self-determination after World War II, right? And Britain, the Allies eventually won World War II, right? But British government did not honor their words. They show reluctance to honor this self-determination. So that's the time Gandhi led Indians to protest. But Gandhi's protest is non-violent protest, right? So this kind of philosophy influenced Martin Luther King, also influenced Cesar Chavez. So you have a whole bunch, also Mandela, right? The former South Africa president, right? So according to Gandhi, he believed that if you let your men, okay, and approach with violence to fight for what you deserve, right, then you actually create this opportunity to your enemy to finger point your just motivation, right? So you are now become a violence, right, a force in the society. So you are causing harm to the society. So no matter how noble your motivation is for this protest, the society will look at your action in a negative way, right? Also, you will blur how the world view upon your agenda. They will focus more on your harm than what you deserve, right? So Gandhi used this non-violent protest, and that gradually would make Britain look very bad, right? So with this, international opinions, and Britain had to recognize India's independence, right? So this kind of non-violent protest become a trend that time in America, right? So Cesar Chavez, Martin Luther King, both promote the idea of nonviolent protest, right? And here we also have Indians, right? So Indians took the opportunity to fight for their rights as well. So what right? Their land, right? So throughout American history, how strong America developed into, right? That's how much the Indians being oppressed. All right, because America's development is at the cost of Indians' land, right? So every time America won this reserve land, they would force Indians to move, right? So American Indian movement in 1968 as well. So supported, of course, by Native American civil rights, right? And recognition of past treaty with the United States, right? So every time your government sign a treaty with us and guarantee this is our preserved land, but you never honor it, right? Never honor it. But Indians, they did not really adopt this nonviolent protest philosophy. So they actually are more radical and activate, right? So they were into like occupation, okay, conflicts, riots, okay. And then 1960s also witnessed America's achievement, the moon landing, right? So moon landing, July 20th, 1969. Neil Armstrong, right? He became the first man to walk on the Earth's moon, right? But there's a conspiracy theory once again question. Is that really happen, or is happen in a studio, right? So there's a whole bunch challenges to this moon landing project, saying that how come there's no air on Earth, on moon, how can the American flag flow, right? And then the shadow of the astronauts, according to that time, is pointing to the wrong direction. Okay, so we have people try to be so picky and try to point out, no, this is fake, that is fake, right? But according to College Board, it's true, right? So this is a historical moment America celebrate, okay? Because when Armstrong, okay, report back to NASA, and then he said, okay, the Eagle has landed, right? And everybody was wow, right? And his famous statement is, that's one small step for men, one giant leap for mankind. So you see how sophisticated American government tried to report this achievement, this victory, is that it's giant leap for mankind. See that? And this victory for mankind is under whose leadership? America. So America's ambition, again, revealed, right? World dominant. So that's a moon landing. Then after Johnson, right? So Johnson won the election in 1964. He was super popular though. When he assumed the office, right? And when he decided to launch his Great Society project, that require huge amount of budget from the Congress. And Congress, of course, try to cut down some of this budget, because it's too much money. But because Lyndon Johnson, his supporting rate that time was 80%, 80%, right? That's like unbelievable and almost impossible for today, all right? 80% supporting rate. So when the president has such a high supporting rate, then you will see Congress most likely will apply, right? Because the president can use this public media as a platform and saying that this project is necessary, and I fail you, my fellow Americans, right? Because I failed to get the budget to fully launch this project from the Congress. And at that point, you see people blame the Congress, right? And the Congress, they want to secure their votes for next term. They probably would just say, fine, right? So Lyndon Johnson was able to launch his Great Society, mainly because his supporting rate was super high, right? 80%. All right. And then 1968, Robert Kennedy ran for the presidential election, right? But he was assassinated, and his rivalry is Richard Nixon, right? So Richard Nixon represent Republican. He lost the election to Kennedy in 1960, right? Mainly because television, right? Television. So this time he came back. He had his campaign manager shape him as like someone you can trust, right? So Richard Nixon, 69 to 74. That's not even eight years, right? That's because he resigned in 74. Why? We'll talk about that. It's the Watergate scandal, right? So Richard Nixon, 37th president, right? He knew exactly what the general society wanted when he ran for the election, right? Because 1960s, we have like, civil movements, right? Civil rights movement. Not just the African-American women and Indians. We also have students, okay? Students, college students in particular. So what do college students want? They want America to end Vietnam War, all right? So to the college students, they criticize the government to drag these American lives into a war that America have nothing to do with. It was a Vietnam War. Vietnam's a civil war, right? And America have no right to ask American citizens to fight for a war that mainly targeted on promoting America's glory and secure the Americans' global dominance, right? So college students back home, they protest against Vietnam War, right? And so Nixon knew that. So during his campaign, okay, he will make some kind of policy promise, right? And after the election, most presidents will try to at least achieve half of them, right? So you keep your promise, and then you can run for the second term, right? So during Richard Nixon's campaign, he promised to downgrade, okay, downsize this involvement in Vietnam War, and gradually remove and take this American soldiers home. And because of that, he got all this, anti-war supporters vote, right? So he won this election in 1968, and then he started to move this American troops from South Vietnam, okay, in 1969. But he did not move all of them though. He gonna save some for next term, right? So he started to retreat, but still have some station in Vietnam, right? What else did he do during his presidency? There's this huge scandal called Pentagon Papers, right? So what is Pentagon Papers? Pentagon is the department that in charge of national security, right? So Pentagon Papers refers to this top secret government documents. And these papers, they specifically describe American government's agenda involving with this Vietnam War, right? So at first, America was like, promoting this concept that Vietnam War is, a war for justice, a war to protect freedom and democracy. And we cannot have our allies south of Vietnam fell to North Viet Cong, right? So with this agenda, many American soldiers, okay, young men, they enlist themselves to the war. But a private soldier somehow get his hand on this, secret paper, and this paper reveal Americans' true agenda about involving in Vietnam. Again, is to promote Americans, dominance role. So drag the war longer enable America much more time to establish Americans' influence in Asia, right? So, but at what cost? At a cost of thousands lives, right? So once this papers was discovered and this private managed to go back to the mainland and then handed this paper to New York Times, right? And then he actually approached to various press, right? And everybody was in shock that we have been lied by our own government for years, ever since the beginning of Vietnam War, right? And then, of course, the media wanted to release and report about this Pentagon paper, right? After all, the media, the freedom of press is guaranteed constitutional right in First Amendment, right? But American government, of course, would not allow this thing from happening, right? So they started to oppress this press and say, no, I know you have your freedom of press, right? But you're violating this Espionage Act, because if you report, you release this paper, it's gonna lead to the threat of national security, right? This is, you know, diplomatic strategy. You cannot report it. But so some press, they backed off, right? But Times, New York Times did not. So Times started to you know, organize these paper and started to publish these papers in sequence, right? And once these papers was being revealed, and the society in America was like, you know, enraged, right? It's like, how can our government lie to us, right? So it's like your employee lie to you, the boss, because after all, American's government is instituted amongst people, right? So this became the biggest government scandal, okay, until Watergate, right? Before that, we have what? We have this the worst president, remember? Warren Harding, this teapot doom scandal, right? That was like, you know, sensational news. But now we have Pentagon paper, right? Set the record, okay, break the record. But later on, Richard Nixon will, you know, once again break the record. All right, and then here we have Kent State, a college student protest because of this Pentagon paper, right? Further solidify this college students' belief that war doesn't matter how justified the cause is. All wars are simply evil, right? So students protest against this Vietnam War even more. And here we have a university still exists today in Ohio, right? So Ohio Kent State University, you can Google them, they're still there, right? Students protest against the Vietnam War, right? And the Cambodian conflicts. So Ohio's National Guard was called to the campus to secure the order. Okay, they didn't want to see this student protest ended up as a riots, right? But because of this students' emotional action that triggered this, you know, guards misshot one of the students, all right? So that deja vu, right? Kind of in like a Boston massacre, right? And this homestead strike in the Carnegie's steel plant in Pennsylvania, right? So the first student got shot and died, and that's the photo here. That's the student got shot, all right? And this photographer captured this snapshot, and then later on become, you know, riots, right? And as a result, 4 students were killed, 4 students, right? So this lead to other like uprising on college campus, right? So it's now not just protest. We're talking about this, you know, brutal treatment upon students' peaceful protest, right? They are not causing any harm to others. It's the guards that kill the students. So you see this wave of college students protest starting in Ohio, and then we have Jackson State, right? So these students, they were again killed, right? And that lead to the 26th Amendment. This Kent State protest lead to 26th Amendment. What is 26th Amendment? Here, in 1971, that's the amendment that American Congress lower the legal voting age. So the legal voting age was 21. But after this Kent State incident, Congress changed it to 18. So right now in America, you are a legal citizen, okay, and then you turn 18. But you need to register yourself first, right? You need to, number one, register your voter, okay, as a voter, and then you can vote in the future, right? So why lower the voting age from 21 to 18 to address to this Kent State incident? Jeffrey, why? How would that help? Jeffrey? From 21 to 18, that will help to ease out this students' protest and prevent the unnecessary tragedy. How?
I guess I would just like lower the amount of like, because like then it would be like adults instead of like children. I don't know.
Focus on the age. College students, how old are they? You are now what, 16, 17, 18, right? But when you go to college, you're 18, right? So lower the legal age to vote to 18. That means what? Students in the future, you don't have to start protest if you're not happy with your government. You have vote. Use your vote to control the government. You don't need to go through this protest again. Okay. So this Kent State college students protest is because students that already have their political ideologies, right? Through this political socialization, right? So they have opinions. So once they have opinions, but they cannot have a voice in the government, that's the worst combination, right? You have opinion, but you don't have voice, right? So college students, they believe protest is the only way they can be heard, right? And in that case, you know, chaos happened. So lower the legal voting age helped to prevent this kind of protests from happening again, right? And then here we have kind of recognize the greatest Secretary of State in American history is Henry Kissinger, right? So Henry Kissinger, that's him in his later age, and that's him speaking to, who's that? Anybody recognize this gentleman right here? No.
Is that Mao Zedong?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's this, yes, okay. So America was anti-communism, right? This ideology, but China turned into communism in 1949, right? So this containment policy finally see a breakthrough, okay? When the Secretary of State of United States, that's the fourth figure in American politics, right? So president, vice president doesn't really possess any real political power, but who was he or she would be the first person in line to assume the office if anything happened to the president, right? And after that is Speaker of the House in Congress. And after that would be Secretary of State, right? So pretty important political figure in America visit China in person, right? So Kissinger is he managed to arrange this meeting. So it's like, olive branch being reached out from America to China, want to fix their relationship, right? So Henry Kissinger, not only he organized this visit for himself, he also organized the ice-breaking visit for his own president, Nixon. So Nixon became the first American president visit China during Cold War era, right? And it's called ice-breaking visit. because America and China gradually pick up trade again, right? And it's the upper, I don't know if you heard of it. It's called the ping pong diplomacy. Ping pong diplomacy. Ria, do you know this one? Ping pong diplomacy. Ever heard of this term?
Never heard of it.
Okay. All right. In China, it was a big historical achievement of ping pong democracy, because for China or America to really kind of take a step back and have this meeting, it's kind of going to violate the government's political ideology and agenda, right? So they're going to find some other way to make this visit, okay, this meeting less political, right? If it's less political, and it's okay, right? So you're not like, turning against your own political agenda, right? So it was this ping pong, that's a sport, right? China's best sport, national sport is ping pong, right? And then so there is a world friendship game in ping pong. So you see Chinese athletic ping pong player compete against foreign ping pong players, and that include Americans player, right? So at one game, Chinese athletes, they finished the competition, and then they got on the bus ready to go back to their hotel. And before the bus started, there's one American ping pong player got on Chinese bus by mistake. He thought that was his bus, and then Chinese players say, that's okay, we're going back to the same hotel anyway, right? So you can ride with us. So this American ping pong player just sat down next to a Chinese ping pong player, and they start talking, and they start exchanging their address, okay? And then after that, they keep in touch. That become an opportunity for Kissinger, right? So he used this, sports is a political, because sports has nothing to do with politics, right? It should remain neutral. That's why you see the symbol of Olympic Games is what? 5 big rings, right? That indicates 5 continents. So when it comes to sports, we should put political agenda aside. It's purely sports, right? So Kissinger used this ping pong diplomacy and arranged this visit. So his agenda to visit China was officially was like to have this ping pong match, right, for American players and Chinese players. But since he was there, right, so might as well talk about business, politics, economy, everything, right? And later on, he arranged Nixon's visit to China, right? That's him, Kissinger. So he was known as like the most talented, skilled Secretary of State ever in American history, right? And he also organized this signing of SALT 1 and SALT 2. The other one, SALT, stands for Strategic Armed Limitation Treaty. It's a treaty, right? So it's a treaty signed between America and Soviet Union, right? What? So by 1960s, 70s, right? Both America and Soviet Union, they already developed like thousands of warheads, right? Nuclear weapon. So that mutually destructive assurance, right? That's how this Cold War never ended up become like a World War III. But still, both power possess, warhead in the number of thousands, right? What if the new leader is someone that is like irrational, right, hot-headed, and that could lead to the end of human species, right? So Kissinger organized this treaty, and SALT 1 is the agreement between America and Soviet Union to stop building nuclear weapon for 5 years. Stop building for 5 years, all right? And that can prevent how many warheads from produced, right? And SALT 2 not just prevent from building, now is to destroy, to limit number of missile launcher and bombers, right? So through this SALT 1 and SALT 2, the total number of warheads in the world started to decrease. Okay, that's SALT 1, SALT 2. Nixon, he resigned in 1974, mainly because of this Watergate scandal. Anybody know about this Watergate scandal? Anybody? Watergate scandal? No? No? Okay. Watergate scandal is what? Nixon, he won the election in 1968, right? And he kept his words. He started to downgrade the Vietnam War scale, right? And he also visited China, is a ice-breaking visit, right? So he was actually pretty popular during his first term. So he wanted to run for the second term. That's pretty much like a guaranteed. But he was a little bit like a paranoid, not very secured individual, right? So he want to find out what Democrats candidate had on him, right? Because he may have some kind of under table deal, okay, with other politicians or whatever, and he was not sure if the opponents will reveal any of those. So he sent his men to the opponent, his competitors, okay, office in Watergate Hotel, right? Try to steal their strategy, okay, what they have on Nixon, right? So his man was caught red-handed, right? And then people recognize, this man and try to break into the Democrats, building, their headquarters for a campaign, right? So they recognize this man. They worked for Nixon. So Nixon was like all of a sudden, right, in the limelight. Okay, the society will demand an explanation. What happened? Why your man breaking to the Democrats campaign office, right? So Nixon right away held a conference and denied that he had anything to do with this breaking, right? That was during the election in 1972, right? And he said this behavior was acted based upon this man's own will. Nixon had nothing to do with it. And the general society believed him. Because if you use your logic to analyze, it's like, no, Nixon did not have to do that, right? So they believe it's just, this man who worked for Nixon try to impress their own boss. So they made the decision on their own. So Nixon successfully won the election in 72 and became the president, right? But later on, we have two news reporters work for Washington Post, Robert Woodsworth and Carl Bernstein. They believe something else. They said Nixon was a powerful president, right? And he was pretty, sometimes can be very dictatorship, right? And so they believe that Nixon's men did not have the courage to act on their own, right? So they started to investigate and dig deeper and found this tape that Nixon had in the Oval Office, right? So Nixon recorded all the conversation that took place in the Oval Office. So one thing is he can keep record and listen to it when necessary. The other is he can keep this tape as a leverage, right? So whoever visit Nixon in the Oval Office could be from his own political party, could be from the opponents, right? So the conversation being recorded, that could be some kind of privilege Nixon could use in the future. So Woodward believed that if Nixon insists his innocence, right, he should surrender those tapes to prove that this alleged the scandal, okay, happened on this particular day, June 17th, right? So the tape, like a month before and after, if you surrender this tapes to the Supreme Court for investigation, then you can prove your innocence, right? but Nixon refused to do so. He claimed that the tapes cannot be in the public because most conversation recorded on the tape, they are national security related topic, right? So it cannot leak to the public. But the investigation is like, no, we are not going to leak to the public. We're just going to have a committee to listen to the conversation for investigation, right? And once we prove your innocence, we'll return the tape to you, and all the documents will be destroyed, right? No record. But Nixon insists, no. So to a point, American society started to question Nixon, right? Is he really innocent? If he is, just give the tapes to the Supreme Court and get it over with. But Nixon just insists, no. And he kept using this national security as an excuse. So to a point, the general public started to realize that perhaps Nixon really is the one behind this Watergate scandal, right? So you see this angry public, they marched to White House, no, to the Capitol building, and then say demand to impeach Nixon, right? So Nixon by then understand one thing: if the Congress failed to protect the president, because the Republican was like dominated the Congress anyway, but now we have this strong demand from the society, and the congressmen, they cannot think about their own political future, right? So if people are really so angry and the Congress still try to protect the president by not, conducting an impeachment, so they may damage their future political career, right? So to a point, Nixon knew that the impeachment was very likely to happen. And if the impeachment really happened, there's no way he could dodge the bullet, because by then he gonna surrender the tape, okay? Because it's a build a case, right? So instead of being impeached and removed from the office, that would be like the biggest humiliation that can happen to any president. So he resigned, right? So he resigned. So he became the only president who resigned, okay, from the presidency, right? So that made his vice president, Ford, became the president. So Ford also was the only American president who never went through presidential election and became president. Okay, because he was the vice president, right? But before that, before this Watergate scandal, Ford was not the vice president. Okay, Nixon actually fired his own vice president and replaced with Ford, because his own vice president started to show this distance, didn't want to have anything to do with Nixon, because Nixon now is being investigated, right? So the vice president distanced himself from Nixon. So Nixon was like, you're not a team player, okay? So he want to replace this vice president with someone that Nixon could control, okay? So he chose Ford. So Ford was more like, gentle individual. So he wouldn't challenge Nixon. So Ford was a senator to begin with, and did not go through the 1968 election, did not go through the 1972 election with Nixon, right? But somehow he became vice president, and somehow he became president, right? So he was like, I did not ask for that, but now I am, okay? But he was not built for a leadership. So during his presidency, okay, he was again being criticized big time. So to a point, Ford actually made this statement. He said, I am not Lincoln, I'm just a Ford. You see the war pound here? I'm not a Lincoln, I'm only a Ford. Anybody can tell the war pound here?
Is it like the cars?
Yes. So Lincoln is kind of like a high-end car, right? And he associate with Abraham Lincoln, right? And Ford is more like a common car, right? That household can afford. So he made this statement: I'm not Lincoln, I'm a Ford. Okay. I think Ford automobile company hate that. So that's Watergate scandal, right? And Furman v. Georgia, 1972 is what? Death penalty was unconstitutional, all right? Again, here is like, still in this civil rights movement era, right? And civil rights movement is to fight for the equal treatment that written in this first 10 amendment, all right? And among this Bill of Rights, there's amendment indicates that the punishment, so banned this cruel and unusual punishment, right? Cruel and unusual punishment, okay? So death penalty would be cruel, right? So you're claiming an individual's life, right? And if, when the government does so, the government is actually play God, right? According to Catholicism. So also according to Americans' Declaration of Independence, right? Our rights are endowed by creator, not by people or government, right? So how could the government claim any individual's life, right? So it's debatable. It's debatable, okay? Some may say, but if the criminal, okay, also, claim other individuals, life, then it's only fair, right? An eye for an eye. But Catholicism say no, thou shalt not kill, right? So Supreme Court ruled that death penalty was unconstitutional, unless fairly applied, unless in other words, unless this person deserve it, right? And the death penalty has been changed from like a hand electric chair to gun, right? And gun execution, and to lethal injection, okay? So now some states actually banned death penalty, right? But some states still have the death penalty, and some states actually banned this lethal injection, because if the formula was not up to quality, it may not do the work, but at the same time will torture this criminal. Okay, there was if the formula of this lethal medicine, okay, they call juice, right? It's wrong, and it will cause this like an internal burning feeling, but not to claim life. So the criminal will feel like the whole body was on fire and couldn't do anything about it, right? So that's Furman v. Georgia in 1972. And then we have War Powers Act, okay. Ever since this Pentagon Papers, right, American society started to lose faith in American government, because first is what is this Teapot Doom scandal, and then is this Pentagon paper, and then is this Watergate scandal, right? So each time the general public proved that American government had been lying to its people, right? So now this Congress believe Congress represent the people, executive branch represent the government, right? So the Congress now require the president to report to Congress within 48 hours whenever this president committing American troops to any kind of war, foreign conflicts, right? You must report. We cannot allow another Pentagon Papers from happening. And congressional approval was necessary for any military commitment of troops for more than 90 days. If you know this conflicts, this military mobilization or station is gonna last more than 90 days, you're gonna go through the Congress, all right? Even though the president is the chief commander, but you need Congress approval. Once again, Congress represent the people, all right? Even though they're part of this government's branch, right? But Congress is the branch that represent people, right? Because Congress is the only branch that is direct election by people. President is not. President is when you have popular vote, but that doesn't count. It depends on the electoral college, electoral college represent the state, and then they supposedly should vote based on people's wish. But if the electoral college vote against the people he or she represented, he or she is allowed to do so, right? So executive branch is not direct vote from the people. That's why it represent the government, right? Okay. And then Richard Nixon, before he resigned, there's a Saturday night massacre. This is a metaphor. He did not kill anybody, right? So Saturday, not at least we know of, right? So Saturday night massacre in 1973 is what? So Nixon's refusal to give up his tape, right, to this person in charge of this investigation, okay, Archibald Cox. So the government's special prosecutor. So Nixon ordered this Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, to fire Cox, right? So Nixon believed that if Cox is fired, and gradually, okay, the public would tend to be forgettable. They will forget about it, okay, and he would dodge the bullet. But this Attorney General refused to fire Cox. Instead, he resigned. All right. So Nixon had to appoint another Attorney General. Okay. And then the new Attorney General also refused to do the dirty work for Richard Nixon. So to this point, Nixon's intention is obvious, right? So that's the Saturday Night Massacre, right? And then eventually in 1974, the tape started to surface, right? And Nixon resigned, right? So that was the, top news right here. Nixon resigned. He urged a time of healing. So our state, our country is like wounded with all this unnecessary scandal, right? So it's a time for healing, right? And this time period, 1960 to 1980, is the era we call the rise of the new right. Okay. Back to this Great Depression, we talk about the left and the right, right? The right conservative, not a big fan for change, and the left radical, believe changing is necessary, right? And also the right is what small government, low taxation. The left, big government, high taxation, right? So if you're going to associate this at the right and the left, between these two political parties, Republican and Democrats, which one is the right? Which one is the left today? What do you say? Which one is the left? Which one is the right? Anyone? No? The left refers to which party, Jeffrey? From today's.
The left refers to, oh, wait. I forgot the name of it. Wait, is it like
Democrats or Republicans?
Oh, Democrats, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes.
Because
the
like
left.
I only know left by like people who are sort of like weird. I only
You
know.
get it right. Yeah, you get it right.
Yeah.
The donkey. Yeah, you can say the donkey, right? So the left is the donkey, the Democrats, all right? And the right is the elephant, Republican, right? But it was not like that before Great Depression, all right? Before Great Depression, Republican was the left, all right? That means what? Republicans support big government, high taxation, right? And changing is good, right? See, Lincoln changed the biggest, right? He changed this slavery system. He was a Republican, but during the Great Depression, right? Before Hoover, it was Coolidge, right? So Coolidge and Hoover, they're both Republican presidents, and they believe that laissez-faire, free market, right? Adam Smith's theory is the best because that was the booming 20s. So the less government intervened in the market, the better. All right. So that gradually shaped the new ideology for Republican, right? Small government, step aside, right? and just let the market develop on its own. And then when Great Depression happened, recall, Hoover did nothing, right, to help the market. And on top of that, he exercised his tariff act, right, to protect domestic industry. So he tried to present, as free as possible market to the business, right, hoping this will attract business back to the market, but he failed, right? And then FDR took over with this New Deal, right? So a whole bunch of government policies aiming to save the market, to regulate the market, right? So you see what FDR did was a typical big government politics, right? And FDR was Democrats, right? So these two political parties gradually shift their political ideology. When it comes to 1960, it's the height of civil rights movements, right? JFK, Democrats, he support civil rights movement. That's government intervention, you see? So Democrats gradually become this, big government believer, right? And then that forced the Republican to take this, the right position. So that's why we call the rise of the new right. So the new right refers to Republican today, okay? But now we just don't say new because it's already like 60 years, right? So we don't say new right, we just say the right. Okay, the right is Republican, the left is Democrats. Okay, and that time, new rights under whose leadership? Republican head of the party, Barry Goldwater. He was a U.S. senator and Republican presidential nominee in 1964. Okay, so running against Lyndon Johnson. Okay, still very small chance because Johnson was very supported, right? And then sparked this resurgence of this conservative movement, right? So he believed in 1960s the federal government intervened way too much in the society, right? Promote this civil rights acts, right? And that's in violating of the majority people's right. If you try to protect minority and you somehow, one way or another, will violate the majority's right, right? So that's his argument. So we have this conservative movement. So conservative movement is the counter movement to civil rights movement, right? So starting from here, 1960s, you see your Republicans started to promote this conservative movement. And then to 1980s, when Ronald Reagan became the new president, he further exercised this new rights ideology. He started to offer tax cut, right? And then increase government spending in space war, right? Aiming to protect Americans' border from Soviet Union, right? So Lincoln was like, the one, not Lincoln, I'm sorry, Reagan. Reagan was the one that really exercised this new rights ideology to its height. So 1960 to 1980 is these 2 decades that shaped these 2 political parties' new ideology. That's why we call rise of new right, right? And Lincoln, he later would call the evil empire, okay, Soviet Union, and try to kind of appeal to Soviet Union's new leader, Gorbachev, right, to do the right thing. Okay, so when we have a small government in the office like Donald Trump, right, you will see the government would try to keep the market as free as possible, all right, and encourage investment, but not offering too much incentive or subsidies, because that would be unfair to other industry. So government try not to interfere with the society, with the market. So what does government do? Strengthen the national security, secure the border. That's why Republicans known for anti-immigrants, secure the border, right? And increase the national defense, right? And Democrats, on the other hand, the opposite. All right, this is controversial this year, though. We just had a U.S. government class before this class. Roe v. Wade is the Supreme Court's decision, right? And granted women's right, guaranteed by Constitution, to have abortion. Because before that, before this Roe v. Wade ruling, abortion was considered as illegal. It's murder, because Catholicism, they believe that no, thou shalt not kill, even that includes unborn baby, right? Because this life, this soul, it's growing inside you and it's created by the creator, that's God, right? And if you have abortion, the actually you're acting against God's will, all right? So that's Catholicism's belief practice. But Roe v. Wade really provoked this Catholicism society. Huge protest, okay, to define this Roe v. Wade. How can Supreme Court granted the right to murder, all right? But this year, early this year, in the Supreme Court overthrown this Roe v. Wade. So now in America, abortion become illegal, all right? But some state governments still try to organize a collective power to fight against this Supreme Court's case, all right, and try to fight for this right to your own body, right, and that's your right to your privacy, right. So that's Roe v. Wade. So this year, I won't worry too much about this Roe v. Wade because it will be controversial since it's no longer the case, right? But just know that this conservative movement, they have big issue with this Roe v. Wade, right? And this year, the radical movement, they have big problem with this new Supreme Court case. All right, and then we have Reagan 1981 to 89, Republican, right? So during Reagan's presidency, he promoted his unique economic policy called Reaganomics. So what is Reaganomics? Republican, right? Small government, low taxation, right? So you want to offer the public tax cut. That's good, right? But that will decrease government revenue, right? So once government's revenue decrease, how are you going to maintain the operation of the government? Not to mention, he spent triple budget in this Star War, right? So Star War is to enhance Americans this space project, all right? So based on Reagan's policy, American government would have less tax revenue, right? Because tax cut, and higher expenditure because of this Star War program, right? So how can Reagan manage to obtain all this money? And Reaganomics' idea is, if government offer tax cut, right, then that will encourage business to invest because now your cost of production is lower, right? Tax is part of your cost production because you're gonna pay to the government, right? So cost of production decrease, attract more business into the market, right? That will lead to a job opportunity increase, right? And this tax cut, not just for business, for individual household as well, personal income tax. So household and household individual, now they have more job opportunity, right? So they have income. So what? They have income, and then their disposable income increase because of tax cut. So as a result, the household will end up spending more money into the market. So you will create this positive cycle, right? And don't worry, even though the tax rate is now smaller, but taxable amount will increase because the market is now busier. So as a result, the government will not face financial crisis. Instead, it should have increased the government revenue. That's his Reaganomics. All right. So he's the classical theory supporter, right? And then during his presidency, he had a close communication with the new leader of Soviet Union, Gorbachev, right? Mikhail Gorbachev. This is a photo. Gorbachev actually visit Reagan at White House. All right. So this is known for the firehouse chat. Firehouse chat. It started from FDR. FDR's New Deal. Remember his broadcast through radio to American society? So he actually had the studio set up in the White House right next to the firehouse. That's because he had health issue, so he need to make sure, okay, he is in a warm environment. But that gradually become a theme, a tradition for the following presidents. So whenever you see president had the meeting with the foreign head of states or head of government, whatever, they like to have the conversation right next to the fireplace. Okay, he's known as the fireplace chat. So Gorbachev, he was the one that reformed Soviet Union. All right. So Gorbachev worked with Reagan to reduce nuclear weapon, also remove Soviet troops from Afghanistan. All right. And he also started this glasnost. Okay. It's openness. And perestroika, it's a reconstruction program in Russia. Right. So the fall of Soviet Union was done by the dissolvement of Soviet Union was done by Gorbachev, but it happened in 1991. Okay, that would be Bush. Okay, Bush's presidency, but the credit should go to Ronald Reagan, because he more than many times Reagan would public appeal to Soviet Union. Okay, this evil empire, please do the right thing, right? And Reagan's presidency, there's also a scandal, right? Iran-Contra affair, 1986. So 1986, right, towards the end of a Cold War, still you see this conflicts between the communist and capitalist party, right? And then in Nicaraguan, right, revolutionary, what happened was United States first aid Iranian, okay, first aid Iranian to fight against Iraq and Afghanistan, right? And Americans support Iran, okay, because Iran's government kind of sided with America, and America sold weapon to Iran. And of course, there's profit, right? But this, sales of military weapon must go through Congress. But Reagan's administration did not go through the Congress. Instead, they just cut a deal and send the weapon to Iran. And they later on, they used the money they made from this weapon trade, right, to aid Nicaraguans revolutionaries. That's another decision that must go through the Congress, right? Because Congress control the power of wallet, right? So two political decisions, the executive branch bypass the Congress. Congress represents the people, right? So the president bypass Congress, that's a sign of dictatorship. All right. So this Iran-Contra affair became another scandal, right? So as a result, the hearing lead to this conviction of a whole bunch White House staff. But Reagan dodged the bullet. Reagan managed to prove his innocence. He did not know. And if you believe his claim, you believe it. If you don't, you don't. Right? So Iran-Contra affair, another government scandal. So right now you will see in America, people tend to withhold their belief whenever the government announce the policy and agenda, and the public will view that with a big question mark, because the government had the record to lie to the people, right? And then during Ronald Reagan's presidency, there's a Black Monday. Again, Dow Jones dropped 22.6%, largest single day drop since 1914, even worse than the New York Stock Exchange, that one. So this stock market crash, why it happened? Because the trade deficit. So trade deficit is when a country import more than export. That means your money will outflow to somewhere in the world, right? It's like you don't have saving at the government anymore, right? So this is because of trade deficit and computerized trading, right? So speculator, you use computer to try to predict the future, and this computerized trading is easy to cheat, right? And then American criticism of West Germany's economic policies. West Germany, one of America's allies, but they're not doing good in their economy either. So all this together crushed this Dow Jones market, and later affected the insurance industry as well, and was a cause of this saving and loan crisis. What is saving and loan scandal? See, another scandal. Sure. Saving and loan scandal is the tax regulation, right? So the government definitely have the right to tax, right? So this tax money will go to the Congress, and the Congress will dole out the budget, okay, on an annual basis. And then the rest, it will be invested to various kind of industry, and the interest also goes to the government. Also, there's a federal bank, right? The Fed. The Fed would aid commercial bank if there's a funding gap, right? So all this, the government must regulate, the federal bank must regulate the commercial bank, right? That's the New Deal banking system reform, right? Remember that? The reserve requirement, everything, right? So in this case, the clients, households, when you have your saving at the bank, you don't have to worry about it, because there's a reserve requirement. So your money, at least portion of it, is still at the bank. And then after the reform of FDR's New Deal, there's also a requirement, require the commercial bank to join this FICA. FICA is Federal Insurance Company Association. So FICA is what? It's the insurance company that all commercial banks are required to buy. You must buy this insurance in case your business went wrong and you file bankruptcy, right? Then what happened to your client's deposit? And don't worry, the insurance will pay for it. Okay, the insurance will honor that. And who runs this FICA? American government. All right. So today you don't have to worry about your saving gone. All right. So as long as the bank you open the account with, they're a member of this FICA, then your deposit is protected. Right. So because of this reform, back to FDR, right? Now, this saving loan scandal is the commercial bank once again tried to take the shortcut, right? And did not really follow this reserve requirement, right? And use the money to invest in a business or another financial sector. So as a result, this black market clash, right? That will lead to this commercial bank to experience the same problem again, right? Just like New Deal, right? I mean, Great Depression, right? But this time, no problem, because they're a member of the FICA, right? So the government, because of the saving and loan scandals, the government have to spend $166 billion to bail out these commercial banks, right? Because the insurance guarantee up to 100,000 deposit. That's more than China. China guarantee you to $500,000 RMB, right? But pretty close though. All right. So now we have the end of the Cold War. So the end of the Cold War, 1991, on December 25th, that's when Soviet Union announced the dissolve of Soviet Union. And then that also marked the victory of the United States, right? So that's another economic growth right there, because of the this emotion effect, right? So the effect of the end of Cold War is the previous satellite states now they get their chance to have final, not final, their self-determination. They can choose to form to quit this Soviet Union and form their own government, or they can choose to remain. Okay, they have the option, right? And most satellite states, they decided to take the chance and claim their own autonomy. So one after one, okay, separate themselves from this union and establish their own government, and they have their autonomy, right? So that's the end of Cold War, right? Okay, and the end of Cold War, you expect world peace, right? But not necessarily, because right before the end of Cold War, we have the Persian Gulf War, right? 1980 to 1988. What happened was Iran-Iraq war, right? This war, if you really want to find out why Iran and Iraq, they're constantly engaged in this conflicts, battle, war. Yeah, it has to be traced back to 7th century. Because they're both Islamic state, right? But Iran is Shia, Iraq is Sunni, right? The difference is Islam was created by Muhammad. And when Muhammad died, he did not specifically appoint his successor. So there become a split within Islamic world, right? A group of people believe that the righteous successor to Muhammad's leadership should be within Muhammad's own family, because Muhammad was a prophet, right? Chosen by God, Allah. So this mission must remain within Muhammad's family, right? So that group of people, they support Muhammad's son-in-law, Ali, to take the leadership. But the other group believe, no, Islam is a political state, I mean, a religion, right? It is. So the state is the church is the state, right? So it must through election, because it's a political state, right? Religion. So must go through election. So whoever received the highest support should be the new leader. All right. So that group of people support Muhammad's father-in-law. All right, and later they become the Sunni, and the group support the son-in-law Ali. They become Shia, right? So Islam split into two families, right? So we have Shia versus Sunni, right? And the conflicts began to accumulate throughout the centuries. That happened in 632, okay, CE. And then that would be like what, 15 centuries already, right? So that explains why Iran and Iraq never get along with each other, because of this conflicts, right? So Iran is a Shia, Iraq is a Sunni, right? And on top of that, the border dispute. Why? Because border determine who gets the oil, right? So the border conflicts. So these two together kind of, doom these two countries will have this constant conflicts with each other. So 1980, Iraq invaded Iran, right? And accusing Iran steal their oil, right? So this border dispute, oil, stealing, everything lead to this war. And this war lasts for 8 years. So this war, it's obvious it's Iraq's fault, because Iran did not kind of steal the oil, right? And then so during this war, UN did not intervene, but UN did suggest, right, they come to neutral ground and sit down and negotiate, right? And then America gonna choose a side, right? So in that case, America sided with Iraq. Why? Because Iran just had their revolution in 1979, right? So Iran used to be an ally to America when the King Shah was still in control. with power. King Shah was the head of the government / head of the state, because Iran before the revolution was a Islamic state, right? But still practice this church and state together government, right? So King Shah was the religious leader, also government leader, right? And he was actually kind of controlled by American government, right? So as long as King Shah obliged to Americans' policy agenda, and then King Shah was the guaranteed with all this prosperity. His family had 4 palaces, 4, right? And his family liked to party a lot. Anybody know the graphic novel called Persepolis? Persepolis. It's a graphic novel published by Margie. Okay, that graphic book novel, it's based on this Iranian Revolution and later on this Persian Gulf War, everything, right? But it was told, the story was narrated through a young girl's perspective, right? So King Shah, corrupt, right? And then the Iranian public had enough with their corrupt king. And then they also had enough that America tried so hard to manipulate and intervene with the Iranian policies, right? So 1979, Iranian revolution took place. So they overthrown their king, exiled the king actually, right? And then welcome their spiritual leader, the supreme leader, right? Came back, Khomeini, right? And then Iran turned against America, right? That's why during this Iran-Iraq war in 1980, if America has to choose side, definitely choose Iraq, because Iran already turned against America. So America secretly, again, militarily supported Iraq, and then Iraq with America at his back, so Iraq can ignore UN's suggestion, right? So this war lasts for 8 years, and then at the end of the war, 1988, nothing changed. The same border, okay, nothing changed. But this 8 years, really exhausted Iraq's finance. So later on, in 1991, there is another war in Persian Gulf. It's this Iraq, 1990, right? Iraq invaded Kuwait, right? So same thing happened as Iraq because of the previous 8 years war with Iran, right? So Iraq government needed to finance the war, right? The government was in debt. So at this point, they have to find an excuse to invade Kuwait, because Kuwait was and still is very, very wealthy, okay? Even though it's a pretty small, okay, in this Arabian Peninsula, but Kuwait's GDP was super high. You can Google it. The Kuwait currency, very, very valuable. I think it's one Kuwait dollar equals to $7 US, if I remember right. Now maybe smaller, okay, less valuable, but still Kuwait dollar, very strong currency. Why? Because Kuwait has a abundant deposit of oil, right? And Kuwait was like a soft city, an open city. Did not really have like a strong border defense. So to Iraq, this is an easy target. You don't even need a tank, just an armory. You can just cross the border. Okay, so Iraq invaded Kuwait, but this time the whole world knew. Okay, Iraq is conducting something unjustifiable. So UN troops came, right, and that started this this alliance power, force to target one country, Iraq, right? So this war is called the Second Persian Gulf War, or you can say Iraq-Kuwait War, right? And this war definitely lead to the later thing is called terrorism, right? So when we talk about terrorism, our first reaction is the 9/11 attack, right? No, before that, in 1993. Okay, there was a bombing in World Trade Center in New York, right? 911, before 911, right? So this Iraq invade Kuwait. America could no longer support Iraq because it's the world's same opinion in Iraq. You must back off, right? So this UN's troops came, right? And they're gonna station themselves in this Arabian peninsula, right? And of course, Iraq would not allow UN army from invasion, right? So UN army, they have to station in the nearby neighboring states, and that would be Saudi Arabia, right? And Saudi Arabia at that time was allied to America, so no problem, come, okay. But these actually provoke Bin Laden. Bin Laden was Saudi Arabian, right? And he was considered as like social elite, well educated, has a bachelor degree, and he also inherited his family fortune, right? But he was a very devoted Muslim, and he believed that these Americans forcing to dominate the world, and most of time disrespect people's local culture and practice, especially religion, right? So you America led this UN army came to our land, and this is our holy land, right? That's where Muhammad was enlightened, was called by Allah, and it just came without asking us people. So Bin Laden, it's a hatred towards America, towards the whole Western world started to show that time, all right? And later on, he would organize various terrorist attacks against America, against Europe, all right? So that's Iraq's invasion Kuwait. But let's talk about the terrorism later. Let's see, whose administration is that? George H. Bush, right? So Bush's administration, he is the 41st president, right? And he was very political experienced. Before his presidency, he was actually a congressman, director of CIA, UN ambassador. He actually stationed in China, Beijing, China for years with his wife, and then forgot his name, his wife's name, all right? But his wife was with him in China. Vice President to Ronald Reagan, right? So when Reagan finished his second term, of course, Reagan endorsed Bush, right? And with the prosperity sort of, right, and with the victory of the fall of Berlin Wall, everything. So Republican won the election in 1988. But there was a big challenge to Bush during his campaign. It was his taxation policy, because Ronald Reagan, he offered tax cut, right? And that's how he has had his Reaganomics, right? That Reagan actually tripled American government's deficit, right? Because he spent too much money, and with this scandal and the Black Friday, so this economic growth did not go the way Reagan wanted. All right. So when Reagan left the office, he also tripled government debts to whoever assumed the office next. Right. So when Bush was running for the president election, people care most is the taxation policy. So, Mr. President, how are you going to balance this deficit? Are you going to raise the tax? Right, and Bush promised. He said, "No, I'm not going to raise the tax. We have another revenue, and we have faith in the market." So everybody asked him the same thing, as long as he tour to a city, a town, or so to a point. Bush actually said this famous phrase. He said, "Read my lips, all right, read my lips. No increased taxation." Right? That. When the second year when he was in the office, he raised the tax, so he broke his promise. But he had no other option. If he did not raise the tax, then the government may file for bankruptcy. So when he announced this increased tax, and the TV news somehow locate the old film and repeated and aired that on television 24/7. Read my lips, read my lips. Right? That's Bush. And Bush signed this START with the Soviet Union, with the Gorbachev. That's the one right here. So START is Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. All right. So both America and Soviet Union agreed to reduce their arsenal by 30%. 30%. All right. That's big number. So it is already a sign to this, end of this Cold War, because they both agree reduce by 30%, and this is signing in America once again, right? And then after Bush, he only served for one term. What? Because he broke his promise. He raised the tax, right? And then we have Clinton, 93 to 2001. Okay. So Bill Clinton, 42nd, again, self-made president. He was born in below average family, but he managed to acquire his attorney's license. And once he became an attorney, he managed to, pace the role for himself to the elite society, and married Hillary. Hillary was from a very, very wealthy family. So his in-law family financially support him in his political career. And he won the election 1992. And then he was also very supported, because during his presidency, America's economy recovered. Despite Reagan left a high government debt, and then lead to this Bush's raised tax. But Clinton was actually, you can say, half luck, because during his presidency, that was the time, you see, America marched into this internet age. That's the time you see IBM, Apple's, Microsoft, they started to introduce themselves into the market. And with this three major innovation, so world communication transformed from land phone. You probably don't know what is land phone. Right? Land phone is, the phone connected to your land, right? So you cannot take it away from you. All right, you have a cell phone, right? But land phone, you still see that in offices, right? So land phone to mobile phone to smartphone, right? You are born into this smartphone era. So you probably when we ask you what is land phone, you say, what is that? Okay. But we were from that era. So all this innovation, right, transform how the world communicates, not just through phone, but through internet, right? And this IBM's introducing this personal computer, that's what we call PC, right? Computer was not new, but computer was like a exclusive equipment for government or big business, because the first computer, you have no idea how big it was. You need to build a building in order to have this computer set up and then start working for you, right? And that was the first computer. It's huge, right? But now we have personal computer, right? You can carry around your laptop, okay, and your iPad, right? So the introduction of personal PC, and then when personal PC was first introduced, that was IBM, right? And then Microsoft, Bill Gates, he believed that personal PC should be, personal computer should be more friendly to the user. And when personal computer was first introduced to the market, you need to know how to program it. You need to at least know how to, key in the command in order for the computer to operate. It's not like, Windows or, Mac system. You just click your mouse and then you can command with the software to work. But no, with the first generation of PC is that you need to key in like a C : / right? You key in whatever code. You need to remember that, all right? That Microsoft introduced Windows that changed the world, right? And Windows 3.1 first generation, right? And now it's Windows 11, I think. Okay. So IBM, Microsoft, and then Apple, right? Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, right? So all these entrepreneurs with their idea being converted into reality, and that generate whole bunch of revenue for American government. That explains why America is still the economic dominant state today, despite this economic crisis, everything. But Americans' GDP is still #1 in the world. Do you know why? How can America? Now, America barely see this manufacturing industry anymore, right? Hardly. And but still, Americans' GDP #1 in the world because of the copyright. If you use any computer product, doesn't matter what system you use, right? Windows is Americans brand, Mac American, Google American, right? So as long as you use computer, you're contributing GDP to America because you're gonna pay for the copyright, right? Because I did not, I just pay at the Office Depot. Oh yeah, but the price includes the copyright already, right? So that's Bill Clinton, why during his 8 years in office, despite he has been impeached, but he still survived to finish his 2 terms because the economy was so strong. Okay. So he actually led the United States into joining the NAFTA as North American Free Trade Agreement. North American includes Canada, America, and Mexico. So this NAFTA kind of expand America's domestic market. So American-made products export to Canada, Mexico, no tariff because it's free trade, right? So that actually enlarged this domestic market into like an entire North America, right? And that encouraged investment as well. That would be Clinton. And he was impeached. He was the 2nd president to be impeached because of his extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky. There's another TV series called American Crime. If you watch that, I think it's season 3 this year. It's called American Crime Impeachment. That's the mini series. Depict Clinton's impeachment. All right. So Bill Clinton. Now, the World Trade Center attack, the first time, happened in 93. Okay. So 1993, Clinton was the president, right? This is what happened in World Trade Center prior to 9/11, right? So what happened was, remember the Second Persian Gulf War, the UN troops stationed in Saudi Arabia, right? And that provoked bin Laden. So he started to organize this revenge. So 1993, February 26th, Taliban, right? Al-Qaeda, that was financially founded by bin Laden, right? And it's established for the ideology to uphold the sacred of Islam. So they want to show the Western world a lesson, right? So what they did was they have this homemade bomb, dirty bomb. It used 336 pounds of this hydrogen, very explosive chemical elements, and loaded them to a pickup truck, and then drive to World Trade Center, park in the basement. And the driver left, and before he left, he then set up the alarm, right? So the timer, and then the driver left. So according to their calculation, they park in the South Tower. All right, no, the North Tower, all right. So they park in the North Tower, and then when the bomb explode, they believe the power could destroy the foundation of the North Tower, and then eventually will lead to the crash of North Tower. So what? And then the North Tower would just crash in the direction to knock down South Tower. So this would be like, a lesson America have to learn. And it did work because that time the public security was not so strict, right, compared as of today. And then this bomb exploded, but it did not destroy the foundation of North Tower, right? So, but still, that's why people did not really recall this attack in 1993, right? Because the destruction was, cannot compare with a 9/11. But nevertheless, that triggers American CIA's attention. Okay, remember CIA? Right at the beginning of the Cold War, America created CIA, right, Central Intelligence Agency, to collect information to prevent communism's activity, right, within America. And since now the Cold War ended, right, so we probably don't need CIA anymore, but they still exist, right, just to collect data from whatever country that's anti-America, right? And CIA, you're supposed to secure, Americans' board, right, to prevent this kind of attack from happening. But CIA failed, right? And that's, like a slap on CIA's face. So after the attack on 26th of February, is how efficient CIA became. On February 28th, 2 days later, they already accused this religious group, okay, led by David Koresh, right, and accused this group in Waco, Texas, right. So accuse them they are being responsible for this attack because this is a religion group, right? So according to Constitution First Amendment, religion freedom, right? So nothing wrong with this religious group have their own property in Waco, Texas, and live under this isolated, self-sufficient lifestyle, right? But CIA was tipped that this religious group, right, they are financially supported by this Al-Qaeda organization. That's why they were able to purchase the land, okay, and have their own small government. And also CIA was tipped that this religious group, they possess illegal weapon. So what happened to Second Amendment? Well, Second Amendment allowed American citizens to bear arms, but just limited to handgun, so you can protect yourself, and shotgun, so you can go hunting. But like UTS, machine gun, not included, right? So CIA was like tipped this religious group. They possess this illegal weapon. Well, so CIA along with this ATF. So ATF, their business is pretty diverse. They are in charge of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosive. So why they are together? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosive. Okay, so acronym is ATF. Well, so ATF demand to search, right? And this leader called David, right? Branch David, he refused, and he used the First Amendment as his shield to deny this ATF's search. And then there is like the ATF had to surround this compound and just take it one step at a time and see what's the next possible strategy. And this siege of Waco lasts for 2 months almost, right? So their strategy, ATF's strategy is what? We just siege this compound, right? Even though you're a self-sufficient community, right? You grow your own vegetable, right? You have your own well, you have water, okay? But eventually you're gonna be out of food because you grow your vegetable, it does not grow just overnight, right? So this siege was aiming to cut off this religious group's supply. So eventually you're gonna go out, right? When you go out and then they can arrest you, you're no longer protected with your own community. But they decide not to. Okay, so the siege standoff lasts for almost 2 months. So to a point, FBI was involved because ATF was not doing their job right. So FBI take over. So when FBI take over, they show no mercy. They started to use this tear gas attack, try to drive people who still choose to stay indoors out, all right? And this tear gas attack lead to a fire in the kitchen, all right? So this is the fire right here. So some said it's the tear gas went wrong and triggered this explosion and this fire and claimed 76 people. And some said, no, it's not. Tear gas is designed, okay, to just drive people out, okay? It's not explosive. But either way, FBI present a whole bunch documents, research paper, and prove this fire. It's not FBI's responsibility, right? So this fire claimed 76 people. Eventually, is being ruled as accident, right? So FBI was not responsible, right? And so this attempt to search a religious group's compound being denied by the people living there lead to the siege, the standoff, eventually a tragedy. 76 people died. That further provoke this anti-Americans desire to, revenge, right? Well, 2 years later, we have this Oklahoma city bombing, right? Oklahoma city bombing, 1995. It was planned by Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh, again, it's an anti-American government, American citizen, right? So Timothy believed Americans, this imperialism behavior was even worse than their previous mother country, Britain, right? So America was actually doing what this evil empires was doing before, right? So he actually was recruited to this Al-Qaeda, right? So Al-Qaeda trained him, right? And then financially support him. And he used the same tactic, build this dirty bomb, and then load it to his truck and drive to the Oklahoma City federal building, hence federal building, right? So he target the federal government, not the state government, but the federal government, right? So he set off its bomb and caused, you see this photo right here, the building to collapse, right? And then this attack, this bombing caused 168 people died, all right? And then McVeigh, again, CIA later proved that McVeigh, this individual was a member of this Al-Qaeda. So it was done deal, right? So Al-Qaeda is responsible for World Trade Center bombing, also responsible for this Oklahoma City bombing, right? So that already started this age of terrorism, right? So age of terrorism started from this World Trade Center bombing in 1993, right? And then after Clinton, we have George W. Bush, right? So George W. Bush, Republican Party. Before Bush, it was Clinton, right? And Clinton, if he was not involved in this, affair with the Monica Lewinsky, he was very popular though, okay? And his Secretary of State would stand a very good chance in winning the presidency in 2000. But because of his, affair with Monica Lewinsky, that changed everything. It's kind of like, it's a scandal, and that kind of hurt the reputation of Democratic Party, and that created the opportunity for Bush to win the election in 2000, right? So he served for 2 terms, okay, 2000 to 2008, right? For the third, and he was the former Texas government sworn into office in 2001. Okay, he signed this No Child Left Behind Act and encouraged education. All right, so he passed this initiative, attempt to improve education, because he believed that the world is now lost in this, hatred, material, right? And, corruption, everything. So only way to fix or to guide the world back to the right track would be through education, right? So he did sign this act, right, called No Child Left Behind Act, and it was ratified, right? And it was his presidency that September 11, 9/11 attack took place, right? So when this 9/11 happened, it really shocked the world. It's like how America, such a super powerful state, being attacked by just a dozen of terrorism, right? Terrorists, and using Americans' own airplane. So the airline being kidnapped was United Airlines, American Airlines. Yeah, this too, right? So 4 airplanes were hijacked by terrorism, by terrorists, and then three successfully attack their target. One is World Trade Center, right? So that take 2 planes, and the other one is the Pentagon. Right? Did not really destroy Pentagon, but at least they destroy the wall, okay, of Pentagon. And then the other plane was shut down, not shut down. Yeah, the other plane shut down, and the other one did not reach the target, the David Camp, because the passengers fought back, right? So once again, this attack, Al-Qaeda was responsible. So that started this, anti-terrorism war. Okay, so war against terrorism. And that's the time you see Bush, his supporting rate, okay, reached the height. And as the chief commander of American Army, he declared war upon Afghanistan and Iraq. Right? Is a wait. Bin Laden was us from Saudi Arabia, right? Yeah. But why America declared war on Afghanistan and Iraq? Because Afghanistan and Iraq, they're both Islamic state, and America claimed there's evidence that Bin Laden fled out of Saudi Arabia and was, sheltered by Afghanistan government, right? And also accused Iraq and Afghanistan possess, this illegal weapon, that's nuclear weapon. So only America and Soviet Union can possess, nuclear weapon, right? So Afghanistan, no, you violated the international agreement, okay, by manufacturing nuclear weapon, right? So the war on Afghanistan and Iraq took place, all right? So this is how 9/11 happened, all right? There are a whole bunch of documentary film you can find, all right? So 4 planes actually succeeded their mission and attacked Americans' building. And this is the attempt attack on Pentagon, but destroy one part of the building, all right? And World Trade Center, gone. Okay, so 2001, that was 21 years ago. 21 years ago. So the original site of the World Trade Center, now it's called Ground Zero. So it was a memorial site to honor those lives lost during the attack, right? So that's 9/11, right? And then at least 3,000 Americans died, and many it just cannot know who they are. Some were just like tourists, and some were just like delivery. Some of them just like I don't know, for borrowing toilet, maybe, okay, restroom. But a lot of victims there, they could not identify, right? And injured over 6,000 more, right? So that's the 9/11 attack. All right, and then the war on Afghanistan is known as the desert attack, right? So the attack on Al-Qaeda, the hunt of Bin Laden, took place in right after September 11, right? And until America overthrown the Afghanistan's government, where is that? Saddam, right? So Saddam Hussein Saddam Hussein, okay, Saddam Hussein, right? So he was overthrown by its people, but with the help of American government. So ever since that time in 2003, America stationed their troops in Afghanistan and kind of, control Afghanistan's government until this year. A lot of stuff happened this year. All right. And then, so this year there's a coup d'etat overthrown the American friendly Afghanistan government, right? And turned Afghanistan back into this Islamic state. And they started to tighten this Sharia law and started to strip off a women's right. Okay. So women now cannot, reveal themselves in public without a veil, and women cannot obtain soccer game, right? Cannot run for office. Okay. And America right now did not have anything to do with this, their domestic affair, because America, kind of withdrawn their army out of Afghanistan, right? So this is the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And in order to cope with this terrorism attack, right, America created a new government agency. It's called Homeland Security, right? So Homeland Security was a government institution that created mainly, okay, to target terrorists. And this agency was dismissed because they believe Bin Laden is dead, right? The hunt of Bin Laden. So he's dead, so we no longer need this Homeland Security. So this terrorism's supervision now returned back to CIA. So without the Homeland Security, now CIA is once again in charge, right? So that's the war against terrorism. So this part I won't worry too much, okay, in AP curriculum. And then ended in Obama, right? So Barack Obama, the 44th president, okay, members of Democratic Party, and the very first African-American president, okay. And he was the one that signed this executive agreement with Europe, known as the Paris Agreement, right? Targeted aiming to ease the global warming, right? But Donald Trump retreated America from this agreement, right? Can he do that? Yes. Because what Obama signed with Europe was called the executive agreement. It's not treaty, right? When you see treaty, it has, it's a binding contract between country and country, right? When you see treaty, it's a binding contract between country and country. But when you see agreement, it's not. Agreement is the binding contract between head of the government and head of government. All right. So this agreement can change when the head of government change. All right. But treaty is between countries. So Obama's Paris agreement was denied, all right, by Trump. And then Biden took office 2 years ago, and he rejoined this Paris agreement, right? So he also promoted this Obamacare, aiming to ease out this social disparity, okay, by launching his project in social security and this social welfare, right? So with Obama as the Democrats president, and then the later on Donald Trump as a Republican, then you will see this political party ever since Abraham Lincoln, right? Ever since the creation of a Republican, America's government has been, shift back forth between Democrats and Republican, right? So this, it's a good example to demonstrate democracy, right? So democracy is what? A peaceful transfer of power that established starting from 1800. All right, so starting from 1800, America demonstrate democracy, guarantee a peaceful transfer of power. And it has been like that ever since up to today. All right, even with this tension of the election in 2020, right? People kind of afraid that maybe Trump will tweet again and there will become like an American civil war, but it did not happen, right? So because America have this solid foundation in American style democracy, right? So that conclude our knowledge part, right? And next we're gonna move on to DBQ. So we already read this document and I already grade your grouping and topic sentence, but I did not go through your sourcing part, right? And we're gonna use this sample essay to target, okay, all 7 points. But before we do so, let's take a break, all right? Let's come back in 10, all right? Okay, let's come back. Are you back? If you're back, type 1, please. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Ria. Sunny. Sunny. All right. I hope you get, take a look of this simple essay during the break. So let's see. This simple essay is highlighted in different color, right? That will indicate which part is aiming for which rubric, right? Which point. So I see your thesis in contextualization. Okay. You get the historical fact right, but the suggestion will be like this. Start with your contextualization and then a transitional statement to introduce your thesis. And within your thesis, make a concession right away, because doing so, you can lay the path for your complexity, recall? So opening paragraph, we're aiming for context, thesis, concession, all right? So the prompt is asking us the relative importance of different causes, right? So relative, you probably find one or two, not one, you probably find 2 or 3. So you can use 1 as your concession, all right? So if you don't find any from the document as a concession, use your knowledge as your concession, all right? That also work. So we need to identify at least 2 causes, right? For the expanding role of the United States. So basically, it's what drive America to expand its influence in the world, right? So what makes America desire, okay, to escalate its world status, right? And the time period we're given here is 1865 to 1910. So your contextualization from 1865 push backwards. For US history, normally we push like a half a century or like, a century the most. Okay, that's US history. But if it's world history, you can go as long as like 2 or 3 centuries before, all right? So 1865, I will probably give myself till like 1800. Okay, prior to 1800, not much because it's isolation, neutrality, right? So starting from 1800 and started ask ourselves, what do we remember that related to America's expansion? Well, the first I remember is Louisiana Purchase, right? 1803. And after that, that would be 1812. It's not land acquisition, but true independence, right? And after that would be, what is it? 1846, right? Mexican-American War. And after that, Civil War? Nope. Okay, so that would be my contextualization. Okay, so we have put Louisiana Purchase, 1812. Okay, and if you count Revolutionary War, you can. Okay, so let's see how we address the pre-context. All right, so contextualization is there to warm your audience up so they know what's happening before this 1865, right? And that's, nothing happened for no reason, right? So 1865, it's the beginning year in this prompt, but something must have happened before that. So that's your contextualization, right? So by the mid-19th century, right, westward expansion had taken on many different forms, right? So like we studied, this is your contextualization, right? Louisiana Purchase to Oregon Trial to the Mexican-American War, right? At least you can cite Louisiana Purchase and Mexican-American War. That would be your contextualization, but it cannot serve as your evidence. Why? Outside evidence, because it does not fit into the timeline, all right? And then often pitting Anglo-American interests against those of Native Americans. So at what cost? Native Americans, Blacks, and immigrants, right? Then we are about to approaching the Civil War, right? Because that's still before 1865. As the Civil War come to a close in 1865, right? The previous Confederate South seems to be in shambles, right? So that try to present the context to our audience that America now had nothing well, basically nothing to worry about back home, that enable America to focus on escalating their world status, right? So the South presents no threats to the federal government, right? So cities were destroyed, property looted, right? And a reliable labor force that was slavery abolished, saying what? There are a lot of reconstruction to do, right? And when there is reconstruction in this scale, right, that demands government spending. So government spending boom up the economy, right? So you see how we are laying this, trap, right? So we can boom our audiences. See, I already told you why. Well, America started from 1865, had the capability and the desire to escalate their status in the world, right? So first is the land expansion, and then it's no more conflicts within their own land, and then the upcoming government spending, right? And like kind of going to lay the foundation of industrialization for America, right? Yet the North seemed to be enjoying rapid economic growth and industrial expansion, right? So even though we have the destruction in the South, but the North, they're celebrating, right? And this can in part be attributed to the favorable tariff, like, more, if you don't remember this one, forget about it, right? And passed during wartime years and better transportation technology that we are talking about. Why, right? What, based on what America could, rise up to like a world power, right? And machinization that allowed corporation to thrive in the post-war years, right? Such as US Steel and Standard Oil, right? This fit into our timeline. Yeah, could be your evidence though. As time went on, the growing surplus of manufactured goods caused America to shed previous isolationist policy, right? So America now being industrialized, right? So they can mass produce basically everything, right? But American population is not high, still not high today, right? So with all this surplus, America gonna find a new market, right? So we have a economic motivation right here, right? So change the isolationist policy and enter an era of increased involvement globally to dominate overseas markets for goods, right? So far, you see our contextualization, it's very thorough, right? We started from Louisiana Purchase, and then, step by step, talk about what happened in between 1803 to 1865. So we give our audience half a century's knowledge. Okay, you're gonna assume your audience know nothing about US history, right? So you cannot present this part of knowledge to your audience, because so far you are not presenting your opinion, you are presenting your context, right? So based on that, you can present your opinion, and then now your audience know why you argue in this way or what you are going to argue later, right? So contextualization, it's a fact that happened before the beginning year of the from the prompt, right? To give a historical information, knowledge, background to prepare your audience so they can understand the topic you try to argue. Without the historical context, you just go ahead and say wild notions of a superiority in American, blah, blah, blah. Your audience like, I don't understand what you're trying to say. What happened before that? No idea, right? So you're telling that second, hey, when it comes to mid-19th century, right? America was already have this exercise, this movement to expand their influence, right? So here is contextualization, right? And then we're gonna introduce our thesis. Thesis is highlighted in yellow right here. Remember our formula. You don't have to follow exactly this way. If you don't want to make concession, it's fine, right? But here we do anyway. X is your concession, right? And then because of A and B, two major reasons. So you believe Y, it's more important than X, right? So to what extent, what the relative importance? Well, we do have X and Y to compare, right? But reason here prove that my thesis is correct. Is Y more important than X, right? So you can say this way, this is your X right here. Right. So while notions of superiority and American exceptionalism, that's your manifest, right, involved and contribute to American expansion in the latter half of the 19th century. So he said, I'm not saying this is not important. Okay, I know it's important, right? But the most direct causes, right? So yes, this is also important, right? Nationalism, manifest destiny, important. But the most direct causes here introduce these two major causes, right? Were territorial gain. I see you group the document into this topic sentence, and yeah, you're supported by evidence. So territorial gain to compete with European empires. So you may argue, so this is another manifest destiny, right? Could be, but America was not strong enough to control European empires yet. Here, America was just trying to compete with the European empire. That's the difference, right? Manifest destiny applied to Americans' westward expansion, right? When America take down, okay, another people, and then they started to rule of them or like governing them or at least control their policies, that's manifest destiny. But America at this time, 1860 to 1910, America could not control Europe yet. All right. So I would not use this to compete with European empires as manifest destiny. Right. So that's the first reason, right? So the first factor is the desire to compete against European empires. And the second factor is the desire for new untapped market around the world, because we talk about the surplus, right? So one is like, this desire to prove America can be viewed as, world power. And second is the desire for economic gain, right? So you have two reasons. So these two reasons outweigh or like more obvious to explain why America, want to raise their influence, right? So we actually introduced three arguments. Is that so? Our concession comes from one of the document grouping, right? So we have 1, 2, 3. Manifest destiny, right? Their superiority, American exceptionalism, right? That we also have economic related documents. We also have this desire to compete against European empire, right? So you place these three groups there and ask yourself, which one is more important, right? And by doing so, you acknowledge to all three arguments. And one of them is your concession. And that concession will be, I know you're right, but mine is more important, right? So here comes your conclusion. Therefore, that's your thesis, right? Global economic factors were more significant. Well, you don't have to say global economic factors, but we can conclude that A and B, one is to compete against European empire. The other is aiming for America's economic gain to dump this surplus to the world, right? So these two, I see Jeffrey probably, right? Overseas, you already mentioned overseas, right? So at that point, you can say, global economic factors, right, were more significant than nationalistic cultural factors. So we have three arguments now, right? One is this manifest destiny. One is to compete with European empires, right? And number three is overseas market, right? So these three, you can further group them into two, right? Manifest destiny is nationalistic cultural factor. And then European and the market together, you can say it's economic factors. That makes sense. So here, the opening paragraph, you definitely have contextualization. You have your thesis, right? And you already foreshadow your concession, your complexity, right? Now, we have although X, right? So here X, I'm going to put it on first body paragraph, right? So you can say, oh, one of the primary reason, right, behind American imperialism after the Civil War was the popular and growing sentiment that American and its Anglo origin were better than other nations. And you can even make it more solid, is it right? One of the primary reasons behind America's imperialism after the Civil War was the continued practice of manifest destiny. You can say that too. Okay. So in this body paragraph, we want to acknowledge, yes, this is also a factor, but it's not as important as the other two, right? So your topic sentence is that, yeah, one of the primary reasons, right? And do we have documents from for this argument? We do. Document 1, right? Document 1 right here, treaty concerning the concession of Russian, right? So here is the purchase from Russia. So document 1 is that the acquisition of the Alaskan territory from Russia in 1867 exposed these views as native groups are described as uncivilized, right? And at the mercy of American laws, right? So America truly believed in their high-end civilization. So after you paraphrase or summarize the main idea of document 1, make sure you have indication saying this one is from document 1. Okay, so your reader, aka College Board, and know, okay, so this is the first document you cite, and you can even bold it. You can even bold it, okay, if you want to, or underline it, right? So we have document 1 usage, right? I use it to support this argument, saying that it's Americans' superiority, right? This exceptionalism sentiment that lead to America's expansion. Expansion in what? Purchase Alaska, right? Or America already has this kind of sentiment, right? And they prove themselves right. See, Alaska, uncivilized, right? And then we want to source document 1, right? I haven't read your sourcing yet. Okay, I got it before the class. So the purchase of Alaska, referred to at the time as Seward's folly, can be viewed in the context of, see that, context of. So if we use manifest destiny as our argument, now your sourcing link back to your argument. So the context of manifest destiny, right? So this analyze document 1 historical context, because back to 1840s, right? America already have this ideology called manifest destiny, or later on you can say that's white burden. America believed that's Americans' duty to make the world better, right? So this belief propelled American influence across the North America, okay, continent throughout the 19th century, justifying this expansion through the perceived culture, economic, and political superiority of American civilization, right? So you see how this sourcing not only identify the historical context, right, but also manage to circle back and prove our argument correct. If you have a question, you can stop me anytime, right? So this sourcing, we not only analyze the document, but we also find a way to connect back to the argument, right? Through what way? Through this manifest destiny, right? And then echoes this better than other nation, right? So you see how these two connect to each other, right? So right here, is that right? Okay, and then keep going. Let's cite document 2, right? So document 2, we analyze this together, right? Possible future and its present criteria, do we? Oh yeah, okay, so it's talking about urgency, right? So America has the obligation to seize the opportunity and do the right thing, right? So document 2 right here. Joshua Strong, that's the author, right? Also claimed that us as superior people, America must expand to other lands to force its values on other supposedly less civilized people. One sentence summarize document 2. And document 2 is like, on top of document 1, your argument is further supported, right? And then sourcing document 2, you can say, is it how we use the document? It's not merely description. No, you don't describe the documents. You use the document as your evidence. So when you write argument essay, when you come up with the evidence, do you describe the evidence? No, you use it as the example or the logic to support your argument, right? So if you want to write an argument saying that deception will destroy your career future, and we just talk about Nixon, right? You can use that as evidence. Agree? So Nixon lied about everything, right? Pretty much, right? And eventually he cannot come up with any more lies, right? That's why he had to resign. Is that right? So in that case, you don't focus on describing what Richard Nixon did, right? You're actually describing the consequences of his deception. Agree? So when you present evidence, make sure what you need, what you want from the evidence, it's more the logic, okay, or at least the consequences, right, to support your argument instead of describing what the evidence is, because they don't need to know the story, okay? They need to know why this evidence can support your argument. That makes sense. So document 1, you see how 3 lines we conclude document 1 without really like describe what the author says, right? Document 2 as well, right? 2 lines we conclude the main idea, right? So now let's source the document 2. This perspective was in line with many social Darwinists, right? So we are talking about point of view here, right? So Joshua's point of view towards this proposal definitely echoes this social Darwinism, right? At the time, seeing a competition of the races unfolding with the Anglo-Saxons as the most favored race, right? So these ideas stemmed from the flawed premises of scientific racism. And that's social Darwinism. They actually provide scientific evidence to prove that. So like, scientists actually did that during that time, during imperialism. So they argued that the brain, the size and the weight of the brain of African Americans is lighter than Europeans, right? So in many Western society, right, developed from Charles Darwin's theory of nature selection, right? So here we have the point of view, and we did not even need to explain, this stems from the, the flaw from scientific racism. We don't have to. At least, actually, right here, we can already circle back. We can find a sentence to circle back to our argument. But if you know this part of history, then you include that, is even better. Okay. All right. So that's document 2. And then we need outside evidence, right? We only need 1, but normally we suggest 2, just in case the one we provide somehow is in the wrong timeline, right? So outside evidence here, the obligation or duty that Strong described would be spread on an even larger scale by Rudyard Kipling's poem. So if you know this poem, go ahead. The White Man's Burden. If you don't know this poet's name, it just mentioned White Man's Burden. That would be your outside evidence. So you can say the obligation or duty that Strong describes would be spread on even larger scale, as in the ideology later being introduced as the White Man's Burden. You can say that, the White Man's Burden, right? So through which they encouraged America to colonize the Philippines, right, after their victory in the Spanish-American War. So this is still within our time frame, right? Because we are given all the way till 1910 and Spanish-American War, 1898. Check. That's your outside evidence. right? Thus civilizing and benefiting the Filipinos, right? So Americans' acquisition of Philippines is under this white man's burden belief, right? So the squashing of Filipino violent resistance to colonizing can be seen through the lens of Strong's envisioned competition of races. We managed to link this outside evidence back to document 2, right? Strong's belief right here, right? And thus as a factor contributing to increase American influence abroad, all right? So take a look at body paragraph 1. Do we have a clear topic sentence right here? Yes, and it's pretty detailed, okay? You can change it to manifest destiny or nationalism. It's up to you, okay? Either way will work, right? So topic sentence, and later on we have 2 documents serve as evidence to support our argument correct, right? And we also source 2 documents, but don't forget, after you analyze the document, you're gonna ask yourself, why do I need it? Oh, because I can use that to further prove my argument correct, right? And then outside evidence, if you can think about that, write on it, right? So America's acquisition of Philippines, that will be a good example to echo this manifest destiny, right? So that's body 1. Move on to body 2, right? So you already acknowledge this manifest destiny is one of the factors, right? But we have 2 more reasons that you believe are even more important, because our prompt is to what extent relative importance, right? So relative importance is another way to ask to what extent, right? Okay, so now we have A and B. A is what? This competition with Europe. B is what? B is the economic game, right? So while, right, so we put it all in 2 different in 1 paragraph, right? So while nationalistic view contribute to United States, right? Expanded role. So nationalistic view, that's while our conception, right? Yeah, the entire society, their manifest destiny contribute to United States expanded role in the world, right? But the industrial growth fueled by the Civil War spurned a desire for territorial expansion and new resources and markets that we were no longer available in the North America continent, right? So the market we have right now, not big enough, right? So here we have document 4, right? Document 4 right here. And sourcing. So document 4 is in our prompt is actually document 6, right? So document, because we ignore 4 and 5, right? So we ignore that, So this document would be our document 4 in the essay, right? So this is 4, okay? Remind yourself. So look at that, school teacher, army, right? So you're gonna choose, right? So it's up to them. It's up to them. And this depict what? Like indigenous people, right? Native people. So could refer to Filipino, right? So after Spanish-American War, America have this desire to what? To civilize Philippines, but by force. Okay, by force. So right here, let's see. We said Frederick Jackson Tuner's frontier thesis that closing the frontier, this is our outside evidence, right? In the 1890, caused America's expansionist drive to push solely beyond its continent boundary of the 19th century, right? So Jackson Turner's thesis that closing of the frontier, that's the continent of America only, right? But the frontier is not yet to be complete. We can expand it to overseas, right? So territorial game through purchase, war, and economic imperialism would vault the United States into the top tier of world power by 20th century. So now we are about to cite document 4. So this is also evidence too, right? So cartoon depicted here as serving new territories to Uncle Sam. This is Uncle Sam right here. Uncle Sam is the acronym for United States, right? And there's another version story. Why is Uncle Sam? Okay, it's during the war. Sam, the tycoon, provides supply to U.S. Army, so they call them Uncle Sam, right? So here, document 4, right? Okay. So following the Spanish, so usage is this part, right? We use the cartoon already. And following the Spanish-American War in 1898, right? Many of these Caribbean and the Pacific territories offer the United States economic and strategic advantage and stepping stone to larger price like a Chinese market, extended the reach for the American Navy. He said, wait a second, I did not even see China in this cartoon, right? But here we have the sourcing, right? So this part would be what? Context, right? So document 4, we know the context is 1898, right? So by then, this sphere of influence is already happened, right? In China. So America wants, remember the open door policy, right? So enable for America to establish their influence in Africa, in Asia, right? So they can take a piece of pie of Chinese market, right? They're gonna have some kind of, path, right? Base. So the base would be what? Philippines, right? So here we know this Philippine, right? Even though it's focused on Filipinos, but we know it's in Asia. That will be your context. That will be your context, right? So you can use this context along with document 4 to support your overseas market argument. All right. And we actually talk about that in the table, if you remember, the expansion through various presidency. And when we talk about McKinley, we talk about the purchase of Philippines, right? And we actually pause and ask you why, right? And then we come up with this conclusion is America is ready to reach out to the world. First stop, Asia, right? So with the purchase of Puerto Rico, with the annex of Hawaii, and then purchase of Philippines, you see the bridge is built. Enable America to come to Asia, right? Why? Open door policy, right? So if you remember that part of history, now you know this cartoon, I can use the historical context in this way to support my argument that expanding overseas market is more important than this manifest destiny that drive America to further expand, right? And then connect with document 3 right here. Alfred Tyler Mahon echoes this need for a stronger Navy as a means of dominating shipping lanes to distant markets, right? So that's your document 3. So I remember you group this to overseas market, and you are right? So we need to not just occupy Caribbean Sea, we need to reach out, right? So we can have more market, right? So that's in this document. And then document 3, we can also source that. We need to source 3, right? So far we already did it, 1, 2, and 4. But just to be safe, right, we source 3 as well. So after increased founding and attempting attention to the Navy by Theodore Roosevelt and others, the Great White Fleet's trip around the world in the early 1900s show rival powers that the United States was a global force, right? That could defend its growing empire, right? So overseas market competition, right? And then document 5. So as President Theodore Roosevelt would reaffirm that United States' dominance position in the Western Hemisphere and expand its role in the region. Okay, so document 5 in our case would be our document 7. So you go back to see document 7. Yeah, this one, Theodore Roosevelt, right? So I remember you grouped it to economic game, I believe, right? I forgot whom. But this is from the president, right? So he was still a sitting president at that time. So president's speech indicate the policy agenda. So we definitely can include that to argue that that's American government's policy agenda, right? And then here we have sourcing is the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, right, went beyond preventing Europeans' influence in America through its justification of direct intervention in the Latin America countries, right? And then primary investor in Central America, Panama Canal, right? And the Caribbean economies. So the United States had the immense leverage in trade relationship and molding the economic policy neighboring nations throughout the hemisphere. So if you want, you can bring up the Panama Canal as another evidence, right? So you look at this two body paragraph. We include A and B. It's the desire to compete with the Europe, right? And that's the part we talk about how Monroe Doctrine, it's in fact, right, continue to influence the future generation in America. And then this open door policy in Asia that prove our other claim, saying that it's economic gain, right? So we include A and B together in this body paragraph, right? And we have competition with Europe, and we have economic gain, okay, the foreign overseas market, right? Then we need this conclusion, okay, to sum up, to wrap up our thesis, right? Our main idea. So here you say that's while social and ideological development certainly encourage American expansion between this period, right? So once again, we say while social and ideological development, right? That definitely contribute to the result, the outcome, right? But you once again rebuttal, right? The economic motives of a growing industrial power directly result in the improved military, increased territorial holdings, and a new self-appointed role of international police, right? So that was set the course of the United States in the into the 20th century and beyond. Okay, so we restate our thesis. I once again acknowledge, yes, social ideology definitely support, right, contribute to this expansion into the world. But when you talk about this desire to compete against Europe and the desire to expand the world market, this social ideology plays more minimal role, right? And you have a post context. What is post context? Is what happened after. This is your complexity as well. Not only we have, although now we have alternative point of view, right? And we give it pretty good credit in body one, right? I say, I know, yes, that help, that contribute. But the other two reasons is more important. And then here at your concluding paragraph, you have a post context. This is also your complexity. Why? Because complexity, we have the alternative point of view. Also, we have what? Cause effect, right? Or continuity and change. So contextualization push back. Complexity you can push forward, right? So this Americans' intention to rise up in the world power lead to World War I, World War II, right? Not America caused that, but it has some kind of influence there, right? So let's talk about post context right here. As a second-rate world power at the beginning of the century, right? And United States found itself at the top along with the Soviet Union, following the global conflicts of World War I, World War II, and the Cold War would cause further American influence around the world through its policy and containment throughout the so-called third world, right? So this part is definitely gonna secure your complexity, and this part too. All right, so you see how we have insurance for all 7 points. Our contextualization is very thorough, right? We'll begin at the time period, and then we started to introduce, okay, what happened in the past, right? And then here you have plenty of like concrete evidence to support your contextualization, but this won't count as your outside evidence. Nope, because it's not within 1865 to 1910, right? And thesis, we introduce 3 reasons right away. XAB, but conclude is why is more important, right? And then topic sentence right here. you must point to a direction. So X is your concession. Yes, it's there, but relatively less important, right? And see how I will send you this document, okay, to your TA, right? So you can take a look and see how this is document one used, how this is sourcing, and how we link it back to the argument. All right. So document 1, 2. Okay. Just note yourself, all right, 1, 2, and then 4. 4 will be 6. Let me just go ahead and change it, and that'll be easier. All right. So 4 is 6. Can we change that? Yes. Yeah, so document 6, right? Okay. Okay, I'll change that later, right? And then each document's usage, each document's sourcing, all right? So refer to the sample essay and try to figure out why this qualify of the rubric, right? And once you figure out, and then you know what to write when you write your own essay, right? So your final homework is to write a complete essay based on this 2018's prompt, all right? And I will have your feedback ready in 2 weeks. So you have time, right? You have time. Turn in like in a week, that will be good enough, right? So give a deep thoughts, okay, how to organize a 7 out of 7 essay like this one. And here is already giving you every point why it qualify, right? So study this simple essay, then you can better write your own DBQ, all right? Okay, so that concludes our Christmas APUSH. Do you have any questions? If you have any questions, ask now. Jeffrey.
My question is, are you going to enjoy a Happy New Year?
Of course, why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, you too, right?
Yeah, of course.
Definitely, life should be happy, celebrated, right? Thank you, thank you. Ria, questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. Happy New Year. Sunny,
You
questions?
too.
Hey, Happy New Year. Okay, Sunny. No? Alrighty, in this case, thank you for spending 10 days with me. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Okay. Really appreciate it. All right. And I hope this course really help you to prepare for your APUSH. Okay. And let me know if you have any questions. If you don't know how to reach out to me, you can reach out to your TA. All right. Happy New Year and best luck on your AP exam and your college application. All right. Goodbye. See you next year. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.